In a world that is just full of noise, how do you find the signal? Today, we're going to break down a spiritual framework from our source material that's designed to do just that. It's a three-step guide for tuning out all the constant distractions so you can find a clear, unwavering sense of purpose. This question from the source really gets to the heart of a super modern problem, right? I mean, just think about it for a second. Every notification, every news feed, every opinion, they're all competing for your attention, all trying to have the last word. This entire framework is really about answering that one challenge. How do you identify the one voice that truly matters for your direction? And here it is, the core conflict just laid bare. You've got two sides. On one side, there's the world's noise, all the distractions, the trends that come and go, the constantly shifting opinions. But on the other side, you have what the source calls God's voice, a source of real purpose, clear guidance, and truth that doesn't change. The whole goal here is to learn how we can consciously shift our focus from that first column over to the second. Okay, so how do we actually make that shift? Well, the source material lays out this simple but honestly pretty profound three-part journey. And it makes total sense. It's a logical progression. You can't act on a plan if you haven't seen it, and you can't really see a vision if you haven't heard it first. So it goes first you hear, then you see, and finally you walk. Let's dive into what each of those steps really means. All right, so it all kicks off with step one, hearing the voice. The source is really clear on this. This is the absolute foundation. It's that crucial first connection, and everything else is going to be built right on top of it. So what does hearing actually mean in this context? We're not talking about an audible sound here. It's more of a fundamental shift. It's about moving away from a life of guesswork, where you're just trying to figure it all out on your own, and moving towards a life that's guided by what the source calls divine revelation. Think of it as a deep, quiet sense of knowing which path you're supposed to take. And this whole concept is really anchored in Scripture. Take this quote from the Gospel of John. It paints this picture of a relationship built on deep familiarity, where a voice is so well known and so trusted, kind of like a shepherd to a sheep, that it's just naturally followed. There's no confusion. And this really brings the whole concept home, directly to us. The source uses this question to push for a moment of honest self-reflection. So think about it. When you're making a decision, doesn't matter if it's big or small, whose voice is actually the loudest in your head? Is it the voice of culture, social media, maybe your own anxieties? Or is it something deeper? Okay, so once that foundation of hearing is in place, the framework moves on to the second step, seeing the vision. And this part is all about taking that internal guidance you've heard and translating it into a tangible, real picture for your life. Now, the source makes a really important distinction here. This idea of vision. It's not about your personal ambition or, your 10-year career plan. It's defined as seeing your life from a divine perspective, one that's focused on what the source calls kingdom impact, which is a purpose that contributes to something way bigger and more lasting than just your own success. And this famous proverb really underscores just how high the stakes are. The source suggests that without this kind of divine vision, we risk perishing. Now, not in a literal sense, of course, but more like drifting aimlessly, losing our ultimate purpose and direction along the way. So this question, which is actually adapted from a prayer in the source material, it just prompts us to look inward. It's asking us to honestly examine our own motivations. Like, what is the true focus of our ambition? Is it all geared toward temporary achievements, or is it aimed at a purpose that has real eternal value? And that brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial step. See, it's not enough to just hear and see. You've got to act on it. And this is step 3, walking the plan. This is all about turning that inner vision into actual real-world action. Now, here's a really crucial point. Walking the plan does not mean you get the entire roadmap all at once. The source describes it much more like a journey of trust, where the path is revealed, often just one step at a time, as you move forward in obedience to that vision you've been given. And this whole idea of trust, it is absolutely central to this walking phase. This proverb is used to really drive home the act of letting go of our own, limited understanding, and instead trusting in a divine direction to light up the path ahead of us. So this all leads to a core principle that's really emphasized in the source: walking by faith, not by sight. What does that mean? It means moving forward based on the direction you've received deep in your heart, even when your eyes can't see the final destination, or even make sense of the next turn in the road. So, when we pull all these pieces together, the hearing, the seeing, and the walking, the source frames this entire process as the basis for fundamental choice. And it's not just a practice, it's bigger than that. It's about choosing the very foundation that you're going to build your entire life on. And that choice really boils down to these two foundations. On one hand, you can build your life on worldly opinion. The source describes this as, well, fickle. It changes every day, it pressures you to conform, and in the end, it just fades away. Or you can build on divine revelation, and that's presented as something permanent, something that transforms you instead of conforming you, and something that will endure through any storm. And wow, this powerful quote from Isaiah really drives that point about permanence home. It draws such a sharp contrast between the fleeting, temporary nature of the world around us and the eternal nature of what it calls the Word of our God, which is the very source of that divine revelation. So, what does this choice actually look like in practice? The source points to three really key outcomes. First, instead of being conformed by all the pressures of the world, you are transformed from the inside out. Second, your mind gets renewed by focusing on truth. And third, and this is huge, you stop just reacting to life's chaos and you start responding with real intention and purpose. Ultimately, this is what it's all about. The entire purpose of this framework, the hearing, the seeing, and the walking, is to get to this point. The huge takeaway here is the possibility of building a life that's founded on something that just won't be shaken, not by shifting trends, not by cultural noise, and not by personal hardship. And that brings us to the end with one final, pretty provocative question from the source. It's really a call to action, and it leaves us with one last thing to think about. If you could really, truly silence all the other voices, all the noise, what is the one thing you might finally be able to hear?